I'm getting my yarn ready and look who arrives. These two little cheekies. So before I start dyeing, I just better feed the little babies. There you go. Hello everyone. Today I'm starting a 27 skein commission. It's going to be done over a few days, I can tell you that right now. So stay with me if you'd like to watch how I dye yarn. Can you hear that sound of rumbling water as it heats? And also, I wish you could smell this yarn. I love that lanolin smell of real wool, straight from the sheep's back. These skeins are DK weight. They're 85% merino and 15% nylon. And they are super washed, so they can be washed in the machine without worrying about felting or shrinkage. Here I'm doing a semi-solid. This colour is called Dusk. It's a really beautiful pinky lilac, which I have added some darkness to make it really warm. Then, once they've taken up all the dye, I'm going to speckle them as well. Now these dyes that I use already have some citric acid in them, which is what's required to make the dye particles adhere to the yarn. But I've also added some extra acid in the way of vinegar. I used to use citric acid, but I can no longer get it easily and reasonably priced like I used to be able to. We'll let them finish off and take up all the dye before I check them to see if they need any more. The dye has pretty much exhausted. I've put all 6 skeins in the one pan, and there's only a low level of water for this speckling process. Now you'll see that I do reuse my gloves if the dye is dried on and not going to come off. And I actually reuse a lot of water. I reuse wherever I can. If the dye bath fully exhausts, you will find that your water can be clear. So I will reuse that depending on what colour I'm using next. There's a few instances where it's not going to happen, and that is with yellow and blue. Those dye baths just never quite exhaust fully. And blue is the colour that I always dye last because it gets everywhere. Somehow or another, the little blue speckles end up in places that you would never think. So at that time, I always also turn my fan off as well because that helps to give the dye particles wings. So I'm just speckling with my hands, with my fingers, I should say. And I'm not aiming for a fine speckle this time because this yarn is part of a temperature blanket. And the pattern is quite intricate, and I find that fine speckles would actually get lost in that pattern. I'm going to show you this customer's temperature blanket, and I think you will be highly impressed. It's really very beautiful. So there we go. I think that's about it. Check to make sure it looks fairly even. I'm going to pop the lid on and let that set. Here's a picture of the temperature blanket using my yarn that I've already dyed. So this dye up is quite a challenge because I need to do it all by eye and feel. Because of course I didn't write down how much dye I added to the dye bath when I previously made all this yarn. So isn't it beautiful? I'll pop a few more of her photos up too. Gathering more yarn for the next colour, and I just want to show you how beautiful and soft this yarn is. Smells glorious and feels glorious too. Oh, I know hand dyed yarn is expensive. $30 a skein is expensive, but if you want to just try it once in your life to shout yourself for something special, it's well worthwhile. There is a lot of work that goes into creating a skein of hand-dyed yarn, and you don't really understand that until you either do it yourself or have it explained to you. But it's definitely a yarn for a very special project. It's a great gift idea for birthdays, you guys. It really, really is so very beautiful. This colour up next is called Mallee. I'm just going to ease into this one. I'll pop the yarn in, see how it looks, and see if it needs any extra dye. Let it naturally sink in because I'm trying to achieve a semi-solid look. So that's where you get a bit of light and shade variations in your skein. I'll leave that to sit, then I'll come back and check on it soon. If I have dye left over, I put it in a jar and it lasts for ages and ages, and I'll reuse it for something else. After looking at these skeins, I could see that it just needs a little more depth of colour. So still easing into it, because you can always add to, but you can never take from. You go past the point of no return. So this is what we've achieved so far, and it is a little bit too light. Also, the yarn dries lighter as well, so you have to take that into consideration too. Just a bit more for this one. I love this colour, absolutely love it. It's a reddish orange with a hint of brown. Here we go. That colour's much better now. It still hasn't exhausted, as you can see, the water is still coloured. So I'm going to pop the lid on and let that sit until all the dye is taken up. I just swapped the pans over so I can show you more closely the next colour. So this one is called Ginger. You wouldn't think that colour is ginger, but it works up to be kind of a yellow with a green base to it, which is actually what ginger looks like on the inside. I really like this one. Again, I'm just going to go gently with this colour. Skein number 1, 2, and 3. We'll let lots of that dye take on the bottom, and then I'll flip it over, but this will always remain a little bit lighter than the underside. If you're wanting the dye bath to become clear and it's just not happening, you either increase your heat or you increase the acid. So I'm just going to pop a little bit extra acid into this one, and then before you know it, the dye bath is clear. Just need to mix that in a little. So heat and acid level are the 2 contributing factors in the way that the dye molecules adhere to the wool. I'm finishing off today's dye session by adding some extra colour to these ginger skeins. At the moment, they're quite a light yellow. There's quite a bit more depth of colour to be had here. A little bit on each side. And this one here is actually a good colour. So that's why I've popped it in last. It doesn't really need a lot more added to it, unlike these other 2. Time for that to set. And then I'll turn them off and they can cool in the pan, and then tomorrow I will speckle these 2 and start dyeing the blue skeins. I do have to order some more of this, as I don't have enough for the 4 skeins that my customer wants. I'll see you again tomorrow. It's a new day and I'm heating up these skeins so I can speckle them. First we'll go with the ginger. This colour has come out really nicely. I love it. I do love greens, and I know that blue is much more popular than green. When I put yarn up for sale, blues will always be the first thing that gets snatched up. And it's quite funny that with the colours that you really prefer, you can dye them up and you think that looks fantastic. And you wouldn't think colour could have an effect. I thought that I would be able to dye the same sorts of skeins with blues, but I just don't feel like I do my blues justice. I'm just so at home with greens and browns. And then yellow. A lot of people don't like yellow either. And that's a-okay. Now we'll do the Mallee. And we'll leave them to sit for a little while. Because I'm working by eye and by feel, I'm going to have to do the blue colour gradually as well. Not go the whole hog straight up. I do most of my work by eye. When I've got to repeat something, I don't write things down and I can usually get it pretty close. It really is a feel thing. I then fill this tray with 3 more skeins of yarn. I'm going to turn these ones over now. Now I'm speckling all 6 skeins in the one pan. It is a new day. I've got 6 more skeins of the warm blue to do before I can hang it all out to dry. Here's a classic example of why you do your blue dye last, because it literally ends up in places you don't even know how it got there.